Great. And now we can do a proper welcome. We have a great agenda today, which is highlighting some of our partners and colleagues in the work, but also really based on the fact that on this call is an amazing group of people with tons of experience. And part of this effort is to capture that and highlight that experience as one of many conversations on this topic and others that are central to what we do. So we have providers on the call, we've got community-based organizations, we have funders, we have state agency representation, we have adult education, and I'm sure there are things I didn't mention, all of whom are part of the Campaign for Work in Connecticut. And the campaign, it's been almost a decade now, right, with different things at different times. But what has always been central to the campaign is to focus on, great economic outcomes for people, particularly those that have historically been underserved by our systems. Communities of color and women, the same folks that are being affected, have been disproportionately not part of the inclusive economy, and right now, disproportionately affected by COVID. And so how do we have a group that comes together discreetly focused on their success and thinking about what we can do individually, but collectively as Connecticut to see that we do have success? So today's topic is about right here, right now. What are we focused on? And as we know, the pandemic has amplified the need for people who are looking for work, for workers, for students to have equitable access to the knowledge and skills and support that's needed to be successful in a modern economy. And so how do we make that happen? So for the campaign, what we want to do is learn from and amplify the voices and the priorities of the people closest to the work to achieve this goal. And for the campaign, that can take many forms, and it has over years. Sometimes it's been legislative action, sometimes it's been administrative action, sometimes it's been education campaigns. So all of those things and more are on the table. But we come together today to identify those priorities, what needs to be done, how do we highlight and lift up that work, and then come back together later to turn that into an agenda for the campaign and really discrete actions. And here's my plug that I'll do several times during this meeting. The next campaign meeting is on September 12th. You will get an invite, please. And if you aren't on a regular email list, or if you're not sure, please put your email in the chat so I know I can invite you to that meeting. As we come together next month, we'll be pulling together the comments from this meeting, from other discussions. So again, we can identify those key issues and priorities, lift them up and turn them into an action plan, all towards that more inclusive economy. So I'm so pleased you are part of that you're excited about that issue and excited to be part of those efforts. And before we kick off into our panel, I want to introduce our colleague and main lead in the Campaign for Work in Connecticut, Jim Boucher from Capital Workforce Partners, to set the stage a little bit about what is the scope of the challenge? What do we know right now about participation in workforce and the Connecticut economy? And so Jim's going to share some data on that to help set the stage for future conversations. Jim, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Amy, and thank you to everyone. Again, it's been a pleasure working with Amy and the Connecticut United Way. I know being from Capital Workforce Partners and one of the 5 workforce development boards, and good to see a number of other workforce development board representatives on today's call. We've been all working hard together in terms of the mission of the Connecticut Campaign for Work in Connecticut to see how we really are assuring that individuals who have not been as connected to some of the employment and training and workforce development opportunities, how are we even further strengthening our connection? And I think, Amy, as you mentioned, today's discussion is really about even further looking at additional strategies or strengthening existing strategies, and also looking at policy and systems issues to further support that. And just briefly, I was just going to note a couple sort of key trends and data points. We all know, right, that the unemployment rate in Connecticut and around the country has been hovering around 4% and now actually potentially dipping below 4%. And so we, have heard a lot in the past from both the Workforce Development Board representatives and the Governor's Workforce Council and in OWS and Department of Labor that there are, more jobs than right now there are individuals who are at least at this point claiming that they're unemployed and or are unemployed, right? And so the question then becomes, as part of our work, is to really look at how are we assuring that we are indeed connecting to individuals who are probably not working or might be working in marginally related jobs. How do they connect to this employment and training? And so what we know about a few other data points is that when we look at what's called the U6 rate, which are also looking at individuals who might be marginally employed but looking for full-time work, that rate is closer to 9.2% in Connecticut. And so there's a good number of individuals in Connecticut that might be working 1, 2, 3 part-time jobs, are underemployed, and they are seeking out additional employment opportunities. We also know in terms of labor force participation, where typically the average over the past few years before COVID had been more closer to 66, 67%. We do know that right now that labor force participation with some populations is much lower than that. We know that adults who do not have high school diplomas, that labor force participation rate is about 57%. I know we have a number of people on this call who are from adult ed programs and other community-based organizations who have significant connections with individuals who do not have high school diplomas. And so that's going to be an area that we, I think, need to even look further at in terms of how are we assuring individuals without high school diplomas are able to get into employment training programming, workforce development programming, so they could be looking at a good job and a good quality career pathway. We also know that female participation levels are about 5.6% lower than that of males. And we know that young people, 16 to 24 years of age, in terms of, again, looking at labor force participation, we know that young people, again, 16 to 24 are about 58%, again, in terms of labor force participation. So those groups are all groups that, as we're looking at further connecting, looking at those key strategies, as you mentioned, Amy, those key policy and systems areas, how do we even strengthen our work and really support strategies around that? We've also heard statewide that individuals who we sometimes talk about as opportunity youth that are between, let's say 18 to 24 years of age, that latest numbers there show about 45,000 to 50,000 opportunity youth. Those are young people out of school, out of work. And we also know because of the COVID pandemic, there was a significant disruption in many high schools and a significant number of additionally disconnected graduating high school students and who might also have not thereby enrolled in typically post-secondary efforts. And lastly, last quick data point is we know that UI claims for Connecticut are significantly lower, much lower than they were during the middle of the pandemic when we saw tens of thousands of individuals who were on UI. And that's down, significantly to almost, a level that was there before COVID. So we see all of those, just to wrap up, as we think about indeed this issue about there potentially and likely being a unprecedented level, maybe almost once in a generation level of employment and training resources that are likely to be coming forward. How do we make sure that those resources, those services can be accessed by some of the populations I just mentioned? And as we think of everybody who's on this call, we think about who we're serving, who we network with, who we know. We're really hoping that we'll get as much input from you today using the chat box, using times when we have some open discussion. And then, as Amy said, over the next month, we're asking everyone here to also talk with your constituencies and people you know, so that, as Amy mentioned, when we come back together in September, we can have a full sense of what are the critical strategies that we will then prioritize going into the upcoming year that we can take action on. So with that, Amy, I might turn it back to you.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate so much you kind of setting the stage with some information I'm sure some of us work on and think about all the time, but also some information in there that might be new to us and is of the moment. So speaking of the moment, and Jim, you mentioned kind of this generational moment, like once in a lifetime opportunity that we're facing. I'm really pleased that Kelli-Vallieres is here from the Office of Workforce Strategies. You all probably know Kelli as the first leader of the Office of Workforce Strategies. It works in conjunction with the Governor's Workforce Council to create meaningful career pathways for all Connecticut residents and access to skilled labor force for all Connecticut businesses. I love, and if you know Kelli, you know this about her, that she comes at this from both directions, right? She is both an educator and a trainer, as well as a business owner of 2 manufacturing companies that she owns and has led as a chief officer. So coming at this from both perspectives, which is really unique. And Kelli is here to set the stage for us to talk about what's happening with OWS and what is kind of the state of workforce funding and the vision of OWS for Connecticut.
Great. Thank you so much, Amy. And thank you, Jim, for setting the stage. I think you hit upon kind of all of those key things that we've all been talking about here today. And I'm really excited, as Jim said, that there's unprecedented amounts of funding that have coming for workforce development. But the dollars that are coming through have a lot of rules and requirements and specific uses of funds. So I'm happy to share what we're doing on our side with these dollars, but then how can we expand the partnerships that we have built together to find those gaps in what the different funding streams can offer and work to develop a more comprehensive strategy where we're meeting people where they're at and we're bringing them through a process that gets them ready for employment and training, and then engages in that employment and training, and then helps them get steady feet underneath them once they get into employment with opportunities for advancement. So I think all of us here have all pieces of that entire big picture and process. So we're really excited having these broader conversations of how can we then coordinate and collaborate together to build out a system that has a warm hand between each one of our services and levels of expertise to champion and support people through the entire process. So I'm happy to talk a little bit about some of the things that the Office of Workforce Strategy is doing to help create that kind of systematic framework and approach across the state of Connecticut, and really our role as a very small office of 4 is to collaborate and bring these conversations together and bring the partners together on a coordinated effort. But we were very fortunate that our governor and our legislators supported a $70 million investment into short-term workforce training programs for those who have been most affected by COVID and those who are in those historically underserved populations. And, Jim laid out very clearly, where we need to start really focusing our outreach and attention to. And so what we've done is created a really fun marketing campaign. It's called the You Campaign. I'm really excited that we're going to be launching it next week and looking forward to your feedback. But the goal here is to help people understand that you can do this. It's building confidence. It's getting people to see themselves in the job positions that they can engage in training with and to support them through that process. And then on the other side of it being a very demand-driven process where our employers are saying, we want you. And our employers are the ones who are letting us know what it is that they need for skills in each industry sector and what specifically hiring commitments they're going to make to be providing opportunities for people upon completion of these programs. So the whole premise is really based on a model of demand and pulling people through the system instead of putting people into a system and hoping that they'll be able to get a job on the outside. There's one waiting for them. So if we get the recipe right, we'll get people employed at the other end. So the marketing campaign will be available to all of you to share and to reach out into those community-based organizations to use those marketing campaign dollars to draw people into a Career Connect portal. This will be a one-stop for anyone who is looking for a training opportunity, upskilling, reskilling opportunity to come into that portal. We're really excited about it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they only are going to get served with Career Connect dollars. We're able to braid and are encouraged to braid our funding sources. So as people come into the portal, they'll get connected to their American Job Center. They will go through a basic skills assessment and industry recognized assessments, and they'll be provided those support services that the American Job Centers provide, including basic skills remediation and referrals to services to help people get to the point where they need to engage. On top of that, we're creating a centralized data management and reporting system. So we have 19 awardees through the Career Connect. I'm really excited to say that just about 50% of that funding is going to our workforce boards, and the other 50% are going to 14 community-based organizations across the state of Connecticut. We have coverage on demographics, industry sector, special populations like programs that are focused on those people with disabilities, the reentry population, opportunity youth, veterans, people of color and women, all really made to provide the support systems that they need to meet them where they're at, help them get those kind of life skills, the agency and employability skills that they need to be able to engage in these training programs. They'll be fully supported with stipends and supportive services such as childcare, transportation, housing, food security, access to technologies, everything that they need, and then supported through getting their certifications and credentials and into employment. And our funding is very specific to hit that kind of piece of getting them that technical and employability skills training to employment. I think when I look at where the gap is, it's helping people who are maybe not quite ready to engage in job training programs right yet because they have maybe some life and emotional program supports that are necessary to get them ready. And that's where the broader kind of vision of how do we collectively work together to support these folks come into play. So we're starting to gather and plan for a philanthropy state-funded state agency summit in next month to start to look at what are the priorities between our philanthropy and community-based organizations and their funding sources braided with the state of Connecticut and federal dollars, and where can we provide those warm handoffs and referrals to each other to champion people through the entire process. And I think that's really where the special sauce is, getting all of our systems to think more broadly. So the way we've approached this is each workforce board has taken an industry lead for a statewide application. So this makes it easier for our program providers to engage. And I see Diana on the call here today. The community college system is a major program provider for many of these programs, not all of them, but many of them. And we're working with the community college system to be able to be more systematic in putting together cohort groups with success coaches for the academic piece. braiding the success coach component with the supportive services, and really building and developing a relationship between community-based organizations, the workforce board system, the community college system that might not have had those relationships prior. So expanding out those relationships, I think, is really important as we're looking at building out kind of a systematic approach. This intake model and scheduling model will be able to ensure that we can put up all the different types of training programs that are provided across the state of Connecticut, whether they're funded specifically with state allocated ARPA dollars through Career Connect, or their SNAP money, or WIOA funds, or any other type of funding that would fully support participants through these cohort groups. So I'm super excited that there's this opportunity to really make connections between the systems that we do, making sure that we're pulling adult ed in and referring people into the adult ed programs, and adult ed referring people into contextualized learning, and making all of those supports. So on top of all of that, we got a very exciting announcement last week where we were awarded an EDA grant, the Economic Development Agency grant called the Good Jobs Challenge. And we're receiving $23.9 million to strengthen the partnerships that we're developing with our businesses and their support partners, the chambers of commerce, our philanthropy groups, our workforce boards, our community colleges and other education providers. And so these funds have already been allocated or out through this grant process. We had to determine what each regional sector partnership was going to do with funds should they receive them. So we have 10 projects going on in manufacturing, healthcare, and IT and bioscience across the state of Connecticut over the next 3 years. And these funds are going to be reaching down as far as our middle school students in some cases, building out career pathway programs for high school students in manufacturing, IT, and healthcare, and many other really innovative partnership programs across the state. So be on the lookout. We're going to be doing press conferences in each region across the state and really announcing broadly what these programs are. We're also doing a major media launch of Career Connect next Tuesday. U.S. Department of Labor Secretary Walsh is coming with Congressman Courtney. We've invited our senators to join and really lay out broadly, and make the announcement of who are all of our partners for Career Connect and getting those contracts completed so those programs can start rolling out. So our marketing campaign with a teaser alerts are going to be also going out next week. So it's a really exciting time to be having this conversation in Connecticut and for all of us to be working collaboratively on these programs. And I thank you very much for the time, and I'm looking forward into the next steps.
Thank you, Kelly. A few things to share there. Super exciting. And next week sounds like the big week. So we will all be looking forward to that and more news. As I've traveled around in kind of my professional role, workforce development, there have been a few things that I think everyone's wanted for a long time. One of which is kind of a centralized portal and entryway into training opportunities, regardless of funding stream. And it sounds like that is on its way and coming. That's huge. Also sounds like we'll be able to pull data from that as things get underway to understand who we're serving, what outcomes and success looks like. That has been something that we've all wondered, how could we get that for years? And this idea of a big picture of, well, it's not just federal or SNAP E&T or philanthropy funded or state funded programs, but how do we look at these comprehensively and how they play off each other and how they build, and then what gaps still remain. And it sounds like that's underway, which is incredibly exciting. So thank you and OWS for all your work in that. It's great. And with all that, I think that we know that all of those great things in place still does not necessarily mean that people of color and women and people who the system has not successfully served or engaged with will get to that point of the portal. right? So what does it take to get to that point of the portal, to get successfully through those training opportunities, and then successfully into those solid careers that people want to be in? And that's the focus of our panel today. I'm so happy that we have facilitating our panel today, Joel Hicks-Rivera. Many of us have known him through years. We've worked with him through CAUSE. We've worked with him at United Way of Central and Northeastern Connecticut, and now in his role at the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving. You know, one of the things that's so great about Joel is it's the center of his work with his portfolio that's K through 12 and beyond, all focused on this. So he lives and breathes this every day and comes at this from a place of people, which is where his personal and professional life are focused. How do we support people, understand what they want for success, and then build systems around that? So what a perfect person to join us today and lead this conversation. Joel will introduce our panelists and the questions, but before we do that, I want to share that one of our panelists, Yasmin Falakher from the National Skills Coalition, because of illness, isn't able to join us today. She was going to bring in some updates about what's happening on the national level in terms of practice and in terms of policy. So we will miss that piece today, but if you join us at the September 12th meeting coming up of the Campaign for Work in Connecticut, she will be joining us to bring that piece into the conversation then. So another reason to have September 12th on your calendar. Joelle, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Amy, and it's great to be here and to see so many faces that I know, so many friends and colleagues. So this is before I start, I kind of want to give you a little bit more context and set the stage just a little bit more, and then we'll ask questions of our panelists. But I will say that, just a quick disclaimer, these are my views, my opinions, and don't necessarily reflect that of the Hartford Foundation. I just want to put that out there, although I am 100% supported by my organization. Just wanted to say that. And I say that because I'm a person who also has lived this, has gone through these systems, and have been doing this work for over 25 years. So just wanted to set that out there. This is a really great opportunity for really all of us to think about this work differently. I mean, reimagine how this can really move forward and transform people's lives. So we have to get out of like that head mindset of, what do we need to like? We need to really get into this transformative, really, this is heartwarming work, right? And until we start to make that transition, this is gonna be super challenging, right? Who are these communities? These communities are communities that are experiencing significant challenges, and it was only exacerbated by COVID-19, right? And it's worse. Not just COVID-19, but these communities were experiencing these systems, issues, and inequities since before time, since before the pandemic, right? You know, we all know that for communities of color, you know, we never get, the starting field is not leveled, right? So how do we really transform this work? Connecticut is mighty people, and we are saturated, right? So like this conversation is timely, and so I'm excited about this, right? So, you know, today we are really pleased to have Alex and Jackie and Alden here to get us going as part of our panel. I'll share with you that Alex Johnson is President and CEO of Capital Workforce Partners, the Regional Workforce Development Board for North Central Connecticut. He's here to share his experience from his work in Connecticut, and also to share what is rising from similar conversations and cohorts he is a part of around the country. So that national perspective. I know Jackie very well. We go way back, all the way to our days in Massachusetts. And Jackie is the CEO of Compass Youth Collaborative and the Human Relations Commissioner for the City of Hartford, and is known as a champion for youth equity and working in new creative ways to engage and support youth. And then we also have Alden Woodcock, which I just met today. Super excited to hear him speak, as the Executive Director of Emerge Connecticut, based in New Haven, that works to break the cycle of recidivism, build community, and bring hope through using transitional employment to engage participants in structured model of wraparound services. So we're going to start off by hearing from Jackie and Alden about their community-based work. So I don't see Jackie on here at all. So hopefully she's somewhere. We have a number of folks on the call, which is super exciting. But Jackie, please share about your work with Opportunity Youth and what you've learned about connecting with and serving young people and what is needed to support them in their career journeys.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you, CWP, for the invitation to be here today. As we mentioned, I'm the CEO at Compass Youth Collaborative, and our work really entails working with both drivers and victims of violence in the community as the first screening question for being a part of our program. We also are looking for several other factors, including juvenile justice involvement, whether they carry a weapon, whether they have any homeless issues and other risk factors. We use all of these things to determine whether or not they're qualified for our program. And once they are in our program, and we're targeting ages 16 to 18 at enrollment, our Peace Builders engage them for a period of 4 years. The reason why 4 years is really an evolution. We started with just doing crisis intervention and working to stabilize these kids and then sending them out into the community to participate in other programs. And what we were finding was that many times youth were coming back into our program and not finding that connection or a place where they could really work through these difficult challenges for the violence that they were facing in their lives, the trauma that they were facing in their lives. So within that 4 years structure that we have now, we start out with relationship building, and that's really the focus of our work. Over time, we are working with them to provide them with cognitive behavioral skills that we embed throughout all of our program. We do not only respond to crises when they happen, and we're available to them, whether it's 10 a.m. or 2 a.m., we're responding bedside for the purpose of making sure that we're a support in the youth's time of need, but also that we are preventing any retaliation in the community afterwards. And we are also working with social workers. If you can imagine the kind of trauma that comes with living in violent situations. In fact, I'll quote some of our data that we've been able to collect recently. 89% of our youth report that they have lost a close family member or friend to homicide. And so when you think about that, the kind of trauma and mental health supports that they need, we are now offering those services at Compass with our own clinical social workers. We are also connecting youth to education. So if it is possible for them to go to the traditional ways, they will go to Hartford Public Schools or CREC, or any other school that they can be a part of. But if they can't, we are also looking to connect them to GED or licensures and things of that nature. We do believe that education is one of those pathways out of poverty and out of their situation. And lastly, we do connect youth to employment. We are working in collaboration with OPP for some of those youth that are ready to participate in external partnerships for work. However, we have decided this past year to start an internal transitional employment program, but not the traditional way. What we are doing, the intention of having this transitional employment is to teach very soft basic skills for the youth, even teaching them to, pack a lunch or respect authority or the importance of arriving on time, all of those things. And it's intended for that population of youth that is immersed in a lifestyle of violence and is not safe to serve anywhere else. And so we want to be able to have that opportunity for them, provide that opportunity for them to fail safely within our program. And if they are not able and they relapse, we do provide them opportunities to reconnect with their peace builder, to get those skills, to reconnect with the social worker wherever the gap may be, so that they can earn their way back into employment services. And so we are, the purpose of that is really not for the workforce skills per se, but to teach those cognitive behavioral skills that often keep them from participating actively in a traditional workforce environment. And so those are the major components of our work. Clearly, the peace builders are always doing case management efforts and making sure that they're connecting them to resources. Sometimes basic life needs get in the way of them being able to perform. And so we are intentionally working to see what those gaps might be for them and connecting them to other partners, because we know we can't do this work alone, and also providing them with whatever resources we have internally. And that in itself is our program in a nutshell. The idea is really to create this collaborative effort though with everyone, and making sure that we find a place for each of our kids.
No problem, Jackie. I mean, Emmy is doing a really great job at summarizing, but I'll just really, and they're in the chat so you can see those, but, you know, just high level, we're talking about changing thoughts, patterns, behaviors. That takes a long time, longer than 4 years, right? So Amy put on there 4 years. We're talking about 4 years. This is 24/7 round the clock work, and it's not linear, right? So just, I want to kind of just pin that there.
Absolutely, and I just wanted to add to that too, that I think we see our work as getting them to the start line, and hopefully handing that work to continue with other partners, because it really does take much more than 4 years.
And thinking not just about the folks, but also how do you take care of the staff that are doing this immense work, right? So I want to bring on Alden from Emerge Connecticut and really talk about your focus on the employment opportunities for people re-entering into the community, and really understand the relationships that you're building with people that you serve that support them, and really kind of gather your thoughts around how you're engaging and supporting people who otherwise would be challenged to access training and career pathways. And then on the flip side of that, what are some of the policies and systems you feel need to be connected so that we have a more inclusive economy that benefit all people?
Sure. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so I'm Alden. I've been with Emerge Connecticut now for coming up on 10 years, which is crazy. And I've been ED for coming up on 3 years now. And Emerge is a social enterprise. So we're a construction company. We bid out on contracts just like any other construction contractor. We do everything from tree planting to, landscaping, light construction. We have a commercial project we're working on right now. And we're able to employ about 50 new people each year, all of whom are making the difficult transition home from incarceration. So people are able to come to our program, and it is a transitional employment model similar to what Jackie was talking about, where you're able to work part-time and earn a weekly paycheck. But what's really important to us, and what's always been the focus of Emerge, is this notion that a job is not enough, right? To keep somebody from falling into the criminal justice system or, being overwhelmed by the challenges and the barriers that we're talking about here today, and that spans over, multiple different populations of people. Anyone who's experiencing barriers to work, those barriers are deep rooted. There are reasons for them, both systemically and through personal experiences, trauma. And there's reasons why, just connecting someone to a job is not enough to keep somebody in that job and make them successful. There are a lot of factors that happen from 5 to 9 that stop people from succeeding from 9 to 5 and achieving their goals. So, when we talk about Emerge, we're really talking about equity. We're really talking about providing more of a holistic approach to employment and making sure that the whole person is, supported in their vision of success. You know, a lot of people come home very inspired from after incarceration, a lot of people come home very motivated and inspired to achieve certain goals. But, you know, the reentry process has a way of quickly reminding you that you are starting over and that there are only certain opportunities that are going to be available to you. And it can be very discouraging when you're trying to navigate all those barriers at once. So we focus a lot on just destigmatizing mental health. I think that a lot of people that I've worked with over the years have had bad experiences with mental health services. A lot of times in school or in DCF or in the prison system, you know, mental health has always been a punishment, punitive, right? You're misbehaving, there's something wrong with you, you got to go talk to this counselor, whatever the case may be. You got to take this medication, whatever. So when you're coming home from incarceration, the last thing a lot of people want to do is start to look at the trauma and the sort of mental wellness that's necessary to achieve your goals. And so we try to provide an environment where, you know, you're seen, you're heard. We have a saying, each one teach one, where everything here is peer-led. So you're working with people that have been through what you've been through and maybe are just a little bit further along in their reentry journey. You're working with people who are actively seeking mental health services. They're in control of their mental health journey. You know, I choose whether I go to therapy, I choose how many, what we talk about in therapy, whether I keep going, who my therapist is. I'm in the driver's seat of my healing. And everyone should be empowered to be in the driver's seat of their mental health journey. So that's what we try to push here. We've got multiple different curriculums. Real Talk is essentially group therapy, but if we called it group therapy, no one would show up. So we call it Real Talk. You know, these are just hats off conversations about the struggles of reentry and life in general. And, you know, we work with predominantly men, but for men and women to be able to share in front of each other and be authentic and tap into their authentic voice, there's something really healing about that. And that trickles into our circle of security parenting, which we've implemented through the support of United Way over the years, trauma-informed groups. We're just starting a healing circle around grief, right? How do you deal with grief? I think that the population coming home from incarceration experiences a much higher rate of grief. It just seems as though everyone at Emerge is somebody's always grieving someone, and it seems disproportionate. So how do you deal with that? And then, you know, preparing people for these jobs that are not going to be kind to them and their humanity, right? Because if a job solved all of the problems that I deal with mentally or personally or whatever, then this conversation would be super simple, right? If a job was enough to solve our problems, we wouldn't all be talking about this right now. So it's a little bit deeper than that. 40 hours a week working can be empowering. It can provide structure, and it obviously provides money. But life is a lot more complicated than that. Trauma is a lot more complicated than that. So how do we invest in models and partnerships that support the whole person and create community and have people feeling understood and heard, and they can begin that healing process? How do we tap into people's creativity, spirituality? How do we create community spaces where people feel they're part of something positive and bigger than themselves? Yeah, so I don't know. I think we sort of feel a lot of pressure as a community, as a society, to try to push people into these good paying jobs and stuff like that. But I don't want to lose sight of the fact that getting into that job, a lot of people who face barriers are going to feel othered. They're going to feel misunderstood. They're going to feel judged. They're going to feel not invested in, especially at low barrier jobs that, you know, we get people into, right? You know, I was just talking to a guy that left to Amazon a year ago, and he leaves every day. He works 12-hour shifts. His wife comes to pick him up and they say, no, you got to stay another 4 or 5 hours. He leaves, his feet are swollen, right? He can't, like, this is not sustainable, right? So not to mention the stigma around his record and things like that he had to battle to even get that job in the first place. You know, so how do we create support for folks that are going through these you know, these employment opportunities, right? Not only before to get them ready, right? To get them to the starting line, as was mentioned earlier. I love that because a lot of people, you know, we're trying to give people second chances, but a lot of people never got a first chance. So how do we provide an equitable access to those jobs? But then also, how do we support people long-term? Because there's no quick fix to the issues that we face as human beings. We're complicated and we need a lot of support. And we need to be in spaces where we feel understood, we feel seen, heard, and you know, we can experience some joy. Like being at Emerge, like I can't even be really in a bad mood because I can hear laughter through the walls over there, you know, because, you know, even though work ended an hour ago, people are just hanging out and building that camaraderie in that community. So, you know, that's what we need more of. That's what we need to invest in. I think Career Connect presents a terrific opportunity to give some of those historically underfunded models that have results like Emerge. I mean, Emerge has an 11% recidivism rate at 2 years compared to almost 50% at the state level. So this kind of intervention really works, but oftentimes is underfunded. So how do we adequately fund services that are really working and showing results and are needed? And furthermore, how do we fund partnerships? Because as Jackie said, you know, we can't do this alone. How do we have strategic partnerships? Amy is a great example of somebody who over the years has always tried to get sort of this collective impact model put in place, but it's always frustrating because without adequate funding, collective impact's impossible because everybody's trying to serve the grants that they individually have, and we end up working in silos. So Career Connect provides a really great opportunity, I think, to sort of close the gaps between some of these services, provide some sort of systemic, you know, flows between services for people. And yeah, I think, you know, how do we make sure we're supporting those places that make people feel whole and create space for people to heal their trauma and really, you know, execute their vision of success, right? Because I don't think it's a lack of willingness on individuals. I don't think it's a lack of money. There's plenty of money out there, but like, how do we like put the money in the right hands and invest in models that work? One other thing I'll say that I think was a step in the right direction from my very small lens on this work was, you know, a lot of, you know, Tony Walker, Robin Porter, Juan Candelaria, a lot of these people on appropriations made a concerted effort a couple of years ago to redirect savings from agencies like, you know, DOC to reinvest some of that into models that were helping to, you know, give people an opportunity after incarceration. And I think, you know, redirecting the flow of resources to models that show results and that people feel welcome in and succeed in, that's where I think we could really make some big changes.
Thank you, Alden. I mean, 100%. We're hearing your message. A job is not enough. It is not linear, and folks are facing challenges, experiencing multiple systems that have a series of their own inequities that don't necessarily talk to each other. I want to bring Alex on, and Alex, if you can just reflect on anything that resonated for you from what was shared by Alden and Jackie, and then if you can talk a little bit about your work with Capital Workers Partners, and anything that you want to share about the work that's happening nationally.
As we all say, put your mic on. So I had to start with there, but I did want to say, you know, I really, you know, want to, you know, thank everyone for organizing this event, and I really enjoyed and understand the challenges that the customers that we're serving faced, and you know, the conversation from Jacqueline and Alden really speaks to the complexity that individuals present as we're seeking to serve them and prepare them for employment. You know, I do recognize that a job is not the end all, but it is an important vehicle to help individuals sustain themselves and to grow themselves financially. But we have to be focused on, and I like your framing, Alden, we have to be focused on supporting the whole person. You know, and I think that that is one of the challenges that I think we need to really think about as we're really building systems and connecting systems. Because I want to just kind of quickly, you know, for those who may not fully understand the workforce system, I just want to briefly describe the workforce system as it's operated through our AJCs, give you an overview of that. You know, speak to some of the enhancements that we'd like to see, but also recognize that there are some systems issues and challenges that I just like to reflect on as well, you know, because this is a unique opportunity. And as we've said, you know, there is a significant investment in supporting individuals to gain employment. But at the same time, we have to make sure that those who were not beneficiaries of the economy prior to the pandemic are also given opportunities to engage and connect and be successful adults. You know, so we do need to be focused on those populations that have traditionally been underserved and underrepresented. And I think that is our challenge that we all have. And I think this is a good opportunity to establish some dialogue so we can begin to figure this out and how best can we, you know, not just identify where there's gaps, but largely I see this as also being an opportunity for us to connect systems, because gaps are when systems aren't connected. And how are we connecting them in a way where we're supporting the whole person? Because I will acknowledge that, you know, as a leader in the workforce system, we're one of 5 workforce boards in Connecticut, we do acknowledge that we cannot do it all as a system, as an organization, and we really need to think about and really, you know, redefine what we refer to as a system to support individuals, because we really have to build systems to support all of the individuals that were just described earlier. But just quickly, I just want to note that, you know, from a workforce development systems perspective, we manage the America's Job Centers, Capital Workforce Partners in the North Central region, oversees 7 job centers in our region. 3 are located in partnership with higher education. 2 of those are with the community college, is Nantucket in Enfield and Tungus in Bristol. And we're also co-located with Goodwin University in East Hartford. We also have a center located in the Hartford Public Library in Hartford. And we also have a center co-located with the adult ed in Manchester. And we have 2 standalone centers. So these are centers where individuals can come to seek out our services. I would note, as a response to the pandemic, we have been able to virtualize all the services that are offered. So individuals do not necessarily need to physically come to our facilities in order to access our services. As Kelly mentioned, you know, we're building the portal, which will enable individuals to start that connection process. And as they are connecting with us through the portal, we also have other virtual tools to continue to support individuals, whether they are comfortable being supported virtually or would prefer to come into our centers. In addition to our virtual supports, we've also built in a chat feature. So individuals not only will be able to communicate virtually with a staff person, but also talk to a live person. So we have that opportunity built in, so our customers have the ability to freely talk to individuals to seek out supports and resources. Also, as we've been trying to continue to enhance the AJC, you know, I would note that all of our career agents or case managers, as we call them, you know, have been trained in human-centered care. They've been trained in career coaching. You know, I think one of the other areas that we need to continue to focus on is how are we supporting our providers and our staff to also understand the notion and get training around trauma-informed care, because that is an essential emerging need that we need to be able to support our customers around. And we're also in the region of North Central. We're also doing a number of pilots. We're doing a pilot, a multi-gen pilot where we're supporting individuals and their families, and a co-teaching environment where the parent is being taught in one room and their kids are being supported and taught and tutored in another room, and then they come together at the end of those sessions. So we're really trying to build our capacity to move from a focus on serving individuals to recognizing that we also need to be thoughtful of meeting the needs of the family and supporting family units when they do exist. So in addition to the multi-gen project, we're also doing a non-custodial parent project as well, where we're working with non-custodial parents to get them engaged in training, get them into jobs, enable them to achieve a level of financial stability so that they then can in turn be united back to their family or to their siblings. So we're doing work in that regard. And again, trying to build our capacity to support the whole individual as well as the family unit itself. So these are some of the enhancements that we're doing within the America's Job Center. But again, as we're doing this, we also need to be thoughtful of how we're connecting these supports and services with other partner organizations. In terms of areas where I do see needs for enhancements, one of the challenges that we constantly face is that individuals really don't understand the notion of careers. And as we're working with individuals, this notion of how are we giving them career information, how are we guiding them around helping them understand what they feel good at, what they feel comfortable about, what motivates them, and how are we helping them identify those inherent skills that they have in a way that we can help them in a thoughtful way make thoughtful career choices and career decisions. So building our capacity to support the notion of career navigators, career coaches is an essential element that we really need to figure out how we provide that support to individuals. Because I will say far too often, individuals figure out what they don't like, but they do it after we have made an investment and guiding them on a path and moving them towards a particular career that they ultimately say at the end of the training, that's not something I really want to be. So how are we building our capacity to really help individuals understand their innate skills and how best that we can support that decision-making process? And I would just also note that, in addition to just continue to build the process, we've made, and Kelly has noted, the governor has made significant investments in workforce development, and we're happy about that and really happy about the resources that the Good Jobs Challenge and NIT grant is going to bring to the system. But again, we have to think about how are we building these. We mentioned the notion of, bringing people to the starting gate. I refer to them as how are we building on-ramps? Because far too often, as we are making our services available to individuals, we're really providing supports to individuals who are either job ready or nearly job ready. But a lot of what we're talking about today is how are we getting those who are not job ready into a path that ultimately moves them, to the workforce system. So we then in turn can connect them to a credentialing program and provide the necessary supports to them to get the job and retain the job. So as I think about the needs for further investments, obviously the notion of additional supports for our adult ed system so we can continue to contextualize learning so we can make it relevant to the customers that we're serving, I think is an area that we do need to think about from a policy perspective to really enhance that system. At the same time, as we've mentioned throughout, the notion of mental health supports are critical. And I think, as Alden has mentioned, just mental health supports, not necessarily as a one-time thing, but how are we providing them with the ability to manage themselves? So how are we providing individuals with training and supports around stress management, coping skills, social emotional challenges? Because I think the easy part of this work is getting someone a job. But the challenge is how are we enabling them to have those core skills and abilities so that they can be successful in that work environment, and not just be successful in retaining that job, but be successful in growing into that job. So providing individuals with those necessary skills, those necessary supports, I think is an essential area where we need to build the capacity of our system to do that. And also, we need to recognize that short-term interventions work for some, but not all. And I think as we're discussing the needs of the population groups that we don't want to get left out from this opportunity, we also have to be mindful that we need to recognize that they need more than a short-term intervention to get them on a path to success. And how are we leveraging and braiding and weaving our funding streams together, as well as getting additional funds so that we can truly support individuals on that long-term path that they need to give them the skills to make the cognitive behavioral changes and supports they need, at the same time enable them to be successful. So those are a couple of the highlights I just wanted to acknowledge. I think this is a unique opportunity, and I'm really seeing the need for us as we're continuing to build out the workforce system to really, in a thoughtful way, build and extend the system to our community-based partners in a thoughtful way, where there is a seamless integration of services and a seamless movement through a process to enable them to develop themselves in a way that they can become successful adults. So I just wanted to just kind of make those comments from the workforce system. But again, just want to reiterate, this is an exciting opportunity. We're looking at the glass being half full, not half empty. But again, we still can't be complacent that we're doing all that we need to do to support those populations who have typically not been included and benefited from the success of the economy and the systems that we built. So with that, Joel, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Alex, and all the panelists. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Alden. This is really great to have you here. It's the beginning of this conversation. We can be here forever, but we only have a few minutes, right? So hopefully in the next 20 minutes, I do want to transition this over into a group discussion and just to kind of pull out again some very salient key points, right? The idea that this is whole person work, right? Person-centered, two-gen focus, and I'm going to say multi-generational focus. I'm going to say also peer-led. That's something that we heard from Alden mention earlier, right? So how do we get folks into this conversation that are most directly impacted by this work? And I will just say, as a licensed clinician, that trauma does not ever leave you. It never leaves your body. What you do is you learn how to manage that trauma. So like a person, a sense, a place or thing, and a horrible boss will throw that off, right? And so that's important to recognize. It doesn't ever leave you. It impacts all of your five senses, right? So just to put that out there, now you've heard this work, you've heard, and again, it's not new conversation. We're going to continue this conversation. Is there anything that resonates with this group? Is there a question that you feel is still unanswered that I can imagine are probably unanswered? And, are there any practice, policies, or systems changes that you might want to share? I'm opening it up to the group. Oh, and I can call on folks. I see Lisa. Yes, Lisa. Wonderful.
Yes, hi, thanks so much. And I just want to thank Alex and Kelly and all of our presenters so far in the theme of supporting not just the person, but the whole family. I just want to remind everyone here and make sure you're aware that the Care for Kids benefit for people in training programs and education is still available, but is time limited right now. So the good news is that, and there are a lot of you on this call who have been champions of opening up Care for Kids for this very reason for a long time. It's great that we have it right now. It is time limited. So it's a pro and it's a con. Unfortunately, that funding will expire. So I just want to challenge all of us to really make sure we maximize that benefit while we have it. And I'd also like to ask for your partnership in thinking ahead to collect stories of the impact, so that we have the opportunity together to lift up the difference that Care for Kids benefit can make to people who need that support to complete the education or the training they need. Because I think we're all going to want to go together into that battle and be ready to fight to maintain what is right now a temporary benefit, but so important for all the reasons that we've heard. So thanks very much.
Liz, I see your hand up. Nice to see you, Liz. Thank you, Lisa.
Well, it's been a long time. This has been extremely interesting, and I'm really excited to hear about a new real program coming where we're really going to start looking at coordinating between departments. I have a few reflections on it and some thoughts. I'm really interested in that intersection between workforce development and other policy issues. I think that and I'm going to say in particular, those policies that we have in place in our government, in our statutes, that keep people poor. There are many policies that we have in place that are designed specifically to keep people poor. I would say, as I've been working in the TANF, that's just one example, looking at TANF and temporary family assistance, cash assistance. It's a very short time window. It's very little money. You have to be in deep poverty to be eligible for it. And as soon as you get to poverty, you're staying in poverty by being on that program. It could be much more robust, and we can do much more. And some of those folks that you're speaking of are going to need that, because they're going to need that extra support so they can go through training and maybe support their family or have enough money to eat. We've found in our focus groups that often people don't know how to apply. The process is onerous, and no one has ever really asked, at least to my knowledge, from the community, can you understand this portal and how it works? And do you have the tools to get into it? And that has been resonating through all of the focus groups we do with families that are in need. So I would like to consider how we include authentic voice in developing the messaging, the portals, and how to spread the word, because the other issue is people don't know what's out there. They just don't know. So those are all very big things. I was really happy to hear about including family. 2-generation programs is sort of my thing. I believe that when parents do better, children do better. And the idea is that we keep that trajectory going and we hit it from both sides so that the whole family can grow together. And then there was one more thing. You brought up Care for Kids, and I have to, of course, comment on early childhood, but I know Meryl's on and he can talk about that more. Yes, that is, we have in place bridges and cliffs, bridges and cliffs, bridges and cliffs. Again, that's a policy, that's a financial decision that our state is making to not fund long-term folks with children, and many of them are in that opportunity youth area that need training and need supports, wraparound services, so that they can feel safe and secure in what they're doing. And childcare is a huge piece of that. And the other shout out was, I heard today about these programs that are 4 years. You need 4 years. We give our middle class and upper middle class and wealthy children 4 or more years of school, and we expect it. Why is it that we expect 6 months for a short-term program is going to turn, it will turn a life around, but it's not going to do it forever. It will for the short term. So I'm really happy to see that these are career paths and folks are going to be given that opportunity to really have a ladder rather than just sort of a road that sort of goes downhill after a while because of wages. Childcare is another issue that is huge with me, but I will say that for Meryl, and just thank you for your time. And thank you for everything you're doing. It's great.
Thank you, Liz. I want to move on to Betty. I see your hand up, and then Diane, and then Jim.
Thanks, Joelle, and thank you to all the panelists for this really enriching and robust discussion, because I think that what's coming out here is coming out from years of experience and elevating the issues that we've been dealing with and that many of us have been working on for years to really look at removing barriers to employment and to connecting folks to the resources. So Alex, I think your point about where you're locating the AJCs, I would also maybe ask that you look at some non-traditional places to embed your AJCs. So I know that in Waterbury with the Working Cities Challenge, the Northwest Regional Investment Board was in the community at some of the community-based organizations. And so where are folks at? And where's our opportunity youth? Where are they? You know, where do they hang out? And I know that we've seen programs that have been happening in barbershops, right? So is that where they're, you know, I mean, is that a good place? I think we want to start thinking out of the box instead of, okay, they're going to be embedded in schools or adult eds, or they're going to be in libraries or whatever. I'm not sure that that's where our opportunity youth are. I'm not sure that's where our single moms are that have kids that have stepped out of the workforce. Our traditional, Alex, to your point of the traditional 3 to 4% that we went into the pandemic with, 3 to 4% of the population not getting engaged. The hardest to employ demographic is what we're talking about. And so we're back to that point, right? We're back to that same 3 to 4%. And how are we looking at connecting those? So how do we look at connecting the resources? So the career navigation piece that we oftentimes are talking about is so integral once you are in a training program or whatever, and you're in the midst of it, and then your aunt gets sick who takes care of your 2-year-old, and then next thing you don't have that childcare in place. So So I know we've been talking about some pilots with 211, but they have to be immediate pilots. So it has to be press 1 for career navigation, and then somebody picks up and says, okay, there's some drop-in centers for childcare in your area. Here's where your child can go. That has to be that warm hand that is always going to be there, because we know that that's how rabbit holes can get folks can go down rabbit holes because they're doing well in the training program, but then something comes up and somebody gets sick with childcare, the car breaks down, whatever it is. Here are the resources that we're going to be able to solve your problem. So that's one piece. Next piece is the flexible funding. Okay, so we're hearing, Kelly, from you and from some of your team about some of the programs, the training programs are coming with the childcare supports, and there are coming with the transportation supports. But then once it ends, where's the flexible funding until the job gets secured? Okay, so we hear over and over again from folks in programs that are supporting individuals to be able to move forward with their lives, is that flexible funding piece in between the ending of the training, the starting of the job, and it takes a couple of weeks till you start getting your first paycheck. How do you get folks to have funding that they're going, a stipend or something that's going to be in place for those couple of months that it's going to take, or, 2 to 3 months to land that job and start getting that first paycheck in the door. Everyone knows me on this meeting. They know that I can go on and on, but when I focus, when I start thinking about the areas where there are the biggest gaps, it's in career navigation and it's in flexible funding.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Betty. Diane?
Sure. So I just wanted to comment on a couple things that Liz and Betty said. I think what we really need to focus on here is finding those in the community that the people trust. It's that trusting relationship that they can really, fall back on, that they can rely on if someone gives them information is important. And Betty had mentioned the barbers. Many young men have that close relationship with their barber. We've seen, a program rolling out in Hartford between Capital Community College and the barber shops that, seems like it's going to be a strong resource for connecting people to the college. And, I also think our faith-based organizations, just getting that person that they trust to spread the word for us is going to be able to ensure that the word is heard, as opposed to, someone that they don't know. So I think we need to do a better job there. And that was it,
Thank you, Diane. You really pulled something out, and that's because we have a number of folks that we know, we heard the statistics, but we can't find them, and that's because there's a trust issue, and because also the folks that are potentially at these places don't look like the folks that are coming to the centers, right? So I think another piece that I will urge all of us to think about as employers ourselves, how do we think about potentially hiring some of these folks and really becoming that poster to other employers, right? How do we hire peer? We need folks that are in peer positions. Jim? Jim yep. And then Meryl?
Yep, Joelle, thank you. And thank you everyone for coming together. And to Kelly and to Alex and to Jim, thank you for mentioning adult education. And I just want to give a quick overview if I can. That we are a system and we're not perfect. Let's start with that. But on the other hand, there's a lot of great things that are happening. And one of the things adult ed in our state, and this is a policy issue, I believe, but also one in terms of communication. Adult education, when we refer to the educational ecosystem, it's okay, the K-12 system, and then we jump to the community college further education system. Adult ed is buried in there. Adult ed is serving, when we look at our population statewide now, this is the 2021 report from the State Department of Education. There's 29,000 enrollees in the adult education program across the state. And that's significant. In our state, we have 300, and again, according to that report, and again, this is the profile for the statewide for 2021, there's 332,000 people that do not have a high school diploma. And again, when we look at those who do not speak English well, that represents 120,000 people. So again, there's a significant population within our state, and all of the underserved, underrepresented groups are in our adult education programs. And again, what happens is that we need to continue to, number one, have adult education be recognized as adult education, to separate it from, not in terms of functioning, but basically when we refer to it, it's K-12, adult education, and then the college system. Why that's important is that it sends a message to the community, to our community at large. Adult education is an option for you in terms, and I'll get into quick programs. I'm going to give a good example when it just recently occurred that when we look at the Connecticut Commission for Educational Technology, they're responsible for the digital learning in the public schools. Larry Cavino and myself, Larry's with Bristol, have been part of the the Commission's Digital Learning Advisory Committee. There was a resolution that just went to our legislators and to the governor. Opening line, Connecticut, whereas, I won't do the whole thing, whereas Connecticut schools, colleges, adult education programs, and libraries have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's the first time there's been a document, at least in from our perspective, that adult education has stood out there. And that's been a discussion for 2 or 3 years that we've been serving on that committee. And finally, it's come into its own. So again, branding adult education is critical. Let me give a model. I work with with CWP for North Central Connecticut. And we have a North Central Connecticut Adult Education Workforce Development Coalition. That's coalition of adult ed programs. There are 8 adult ed programs. We also have the State Department of Ed. We have CWP. We have Todd Birch with at the Department of Labor. And we meet every other month to review where we are. We have created pre-apprenticeships, apprenticeships, certificate programs that nationally occupationally recognized certificates for our students by sharing resources. And that's the critical part. It's not just asking for funds, it's saying, where can we share? We have a typical academic. Yep.
Jim, I really hate to interrupt you. We have a few more minutes left. I know you're doing amazing work, and it's great to see you. But if we can get Merrill and Allie really quickly, just to give a few.
Joelle, thank you. And there's one hub, and I will send this to people who are interested. There's one hub where our funds cannot be used for vocational related services. So again, funding is a critical issue. I'll be at other meetings, but again, thank you, Joelle. Appreciate it. Good seeing you again.
Jim. Good seeing you as well. Merrill?
Sure. A bunch of people have mentioned childcare, so I just wanted to give people an update on that. Based on the survey research that Liz compiled off of the listserv, roughly a third of the early childhood workforce left their jobs between November and April. And it's always been a high turnover industry because it's a low wage industry. But what we're seeing now is lots of people leaving the field altogether, which means that we have quite a few mothballed classrooms because there are no teachers. And this is an ongoing problem for getting women back into the workforce because they can't find childcare. And it is most prevalent in the cities. I know in New Britain, we've got a program that is short 50 out of 110 staff. We've got, I know that in Bridgeport, there are lots of closed classrooms as well. It varies across the state, but it is an ongoing problem that we have a shortage of childcare, and that is on top of the existing shortage of infant toddler slots. Now what we have is a lot of the funded preschool slots are not in service because there aren't teachers. And that's going to be, it's going to take a while to fix that. It's obviously just an issue of a low wage, low benefit, high stress job that hasn't been valued yet. And because we have a system in which 80% of childcare is paid for by parents, there's real downward pressure on the revenue that comes into programs to support wages. We mentioned earlier the issue that right now, Care for Kids is available for people in job training and in college. That is time limited, and we will be going back to the legislature to try and get that funded with state dollars as opposed to ARPA dollars. And as Lisa said, it would really help to have stories of how that benefit has made a difference for parents who wouldn't have been able to get it in the past. Thanks.
Thanks, Marilyn. So Allie, can we sneak you in real quick? Real
quick, I'll make it quick. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Joelle. I just wanted to name, I kept hearing meet people where they're at, meet people where they're at. And at United Way, one of the things that we have done is we had 7 community conversations with job seekers to ask them, what has their experience been? Where are the challenges? Where are the barriers? Where are the things we're missing? And engaging them in the design of our programs, engaging them in making the choices of how we invest our dollars. And in the process, build the skills, build the empowerment that they're making a difference for other job seekers. So I just emphasize that as we think about all of these programs and the wealth of doors that they can come into, how do we, at the beginning and at the design end of it, engage those who are most affected and could most benefit from this program. So that's it. Thank you.
That was a beautiful way to close. Thank you. In so many ways, it sums up all of this. And one of the great transitions that we know is needed, right? To serve the folks we really want to serve that we necessarily haven't been able to bring into the system or keep in the system successfully. And we've all just heard an array of things that wrap around that, which are, this is daunting, right? This is daunting. If it were easy, we would have done it, but it is the work. Right. And so many people on this call have highlighted and named the challenges, but also things that people are doing to get there. And it is, it can be different. It can be new. If you've been doing it, it changes every day even, right? And how you address it. And together we can kind of support people in getting there and raise up, because as providers, as funders, whatever role you have, you can do so much in your role. But there's an end to what you can do in your role. And you need those systems in place and policies in place and services arranged in a way to allow you to be successful and for it to all work. And so that's where the campaign wants to raise your voices, to be listening, to bring that together. So thank you all for engaging in this conversation. It has been immense, and I have no doubt we could keep going and going and going. So it kills me to be the person who shuts it down. That is my sad job for the day, but I don't want it to end here. So you all are connected to so many people and places and organizations. And if you are having these conversations in what you do, I ask that you invite us to join in or share what you've learned. Many people are doing that. So we can help bring that into this conversation and benefit from hearing it. If you want to have this conversation and talk about these questions in your forum, and we can be helpful in doing that, we're happy to come to you and help facilitate this conversation and bring it forward. So many ways. This is one conversation of many, and more to come. And the next step for us for more to come, again, is that September 12th campaign Working for Connecticut meeting at 2 o'clock. We'll send an invitation out. We'll be bringing together what we heard here, what you're bringing from other places, and really focus on what are our action steps? Where do we need to be focused on policies and systems change and practices that we can support all of us moving together to that inclusive economy. We've been talking about it, and there's such energy, yet there's such significant headwinds, right? So we need all of us together to really tackle this moment. I want to thank our presenters. I want to thank our fearless facilitator, Joelle. I want to thank all of you who've been part of this movement, right? Intensely, personally, professionally working for years to make this happen. This is a big moment, and it is going to take all of us plus to make it happen, but we are excited that we are doing this and doing this together. So please mark your calendar, stay with us. We want to continue this, and we look forward to distilling this down to action steps that we can take forward. We've got a legislative session coming up. It's a big moment. We've got, as Kelly's mentioned, historical investment. It's a big moment. We've got movement on the federal level. It's a big moment. All of those pieces come together. And we look forward to doing that work with you. So thank you, everyone. Again, email in the sidebar chat if you don't think I have it, and just wishing you all an amazing afternoon and look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.